that day, I can picture where I was. I'm like, that was my first mistake. I should have stood firm. But again, in my mind, these people know more than me. So why wouldn't we trust them and do that? So we invested in a huge amount of inventory on a double amount probably of SKUs than we wanted to start with.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of My Biggest Marketing Mistake, the podcast where we transform costly failures into priceless insights. I'm your host, Kacy Maxwell, and I am very excited to talk about this story with you today because it focuses on an area of marketing that is near and dear to my heart, and that is branding. Now, the way that we're going to talk about branding is not the way that most people think about branding, but more on that in a minute. Now, this is episode number 3, and if you haven't listened to the first 2, I highly recommend going back and listening to them. The insights that you're going to get from hearing these CEOs talk about their missteps is going to make you a better marketer. So go check them out, and if you love them, leave me a review. Now, one thing I love doing before I kick off these stories is share a quote about failure, because after all, that's what this podcast is all about. Changing the way that we think about failure. Now, today's failure quote comes from Rick Rubin. And if you haven't read his book, The Creative Act, I highly recommend doing that. Not a sponsor. And the way he talks about failure is this. When working through ways of solving a puzzle, there are no mistakes. Each unsuccessful solution gets you closer to one that works. And I love that visual when you think about failure, because sometimes when you're doing a puzzle and you pick up a piece, it looks like it's the right piece, like it's got the flowers and the edges are perfect, and you don't realize that it's not the right piece until you try to fit it into the puzzle. And that happens in marketing all the time. So, as I alluded to earlier, today's story is all about branding, but not in the way that you might think. When you hear this story, your first response honestly might be, that wasn't a marketing mistake. But you'd be wrong. A lot of times when we talk about a company's brand, we tend to reduce it down to a logo or a tagline or a color palette. But honestly, brand is so much more than that. It is literally every interaction that somebody has with you as a company. It's your shipping label. It's your packaging. It is your customer service. It is your interaction when they return something, not just the emails that you send and what your website looks like. At the end of the day, brand is your reputation. And that reputation is based on experiences with you. Think about this. How many times have you been out surfing and got an ad that hit exactly what you were looking for? And you went to the site, the pictures looked like you, they were perfect, you bought it, and you got it in the mail, and you opened it up, you tried to use it, and it was terrible. What do you think? The first thing you think is, well, that was false advertising, right? You immediately blame the marketing for something that the product didn't deliver. But probably what happened is that the marketer that put all that together put together a marketing campaign around what they hoped the product would be, not what it actually was. And so when you think about brand, how many times are you going to buy from that company again? Probably 0. But their marketing was great. Their branding was great. Well, why aren't you going to buy from them again? Because your experience with the product was terrible. And so that's the story that we're going to talk about today, about how branding is the entire experience. Now, you can't control every single thing about the experience, but what about the parts that you can? Sometimes when you try to fix that experience, you have to say no to things that may be driving revenue for you. Now, today's story comes from Steph Weibring of Joy Creative Shop. So Steph runs a growing stationery and paper goods company that began as a small Etsy store, but has taken off to become a thriving direct-to-consumer brand. The coolest part is that Joy Creative Shop was built around the simple yet powerful idea that busy moms, and all of us really, deserve beautifully designed products that help them save time, share love, and look like they totally have it together, even though we all know that none of us really do. But Steph had a decision to make as she looked to scale her business. And the decision she made potentially could have hurt her business and, most importantly, hurt her brand. So today we're going to talk about how a customer-centric approach is key to growth, how experience plays into your brand reputation, and why, if you care about that reputation, you sometimes have to walk away from an opportunity that just isn't the right fit. You're really going to get a lot out of this episode, and we're going to talk to Steph right after this.
You want to grow, and you need a marketing partner to help accelerate the process. At Provisions Group, we take a comprehensive approach to marketing and technology to maximize impact and growth. We work alongside you to build and implement a customized marketing plan, and we help you optimize your tech stack so you can operate efficiently and securely. Plus, our tenured fractional advisors are here to partner with you to keep your objectives aligned and create a roadmap to success.
All right, well, welcome, Steph. Thanks for joining me today to talk a little bit about your marketing failure. I know you're probably super excited to talk about a time that things didn't go right, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we get in there, I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with failure. How has failure shaped you? How has it been something that you are just so comfortable going on a podcast and talking about?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. Happy to always see you again. And failure is one of those things that it actually started probably growing up, and I was unaware of the impact it had on me. It was just something that was kind of a part of my, every day of trying out for something, not making it, and then kind of having to figure out how to rebound. So I did it over and over, almost to the point where it was kind of a joke. I was like, well, you think I'll make anything, And then once I got old enough to really reflect on that, I didn't know it then. It hurt when you're little but once I was old enough to reflect on it and especially apply it to business, I kind of realized one of my superpowers is really not having that fear to fail. You always, if it doesn't work out, it's like a plan A. Well, plan A didn't work out. So what's my plan B? So you're able to rebound. You're not crumbling at the first sight of failure. You're like, well, that wasn't really meant to be for me, apparently. So I'm going to go on to the next thing. And it really does prove that it usually works out best the second time around, or the path it actually works out. So.
Well, that's so great. Because you and I were having a conversation before we got on here, and I know this is a podcast about marketing and not parenting, but we were talking about how important it is for your kids to experience failure so that when they go later in life and realize that failure is a part of just life in general, it's not going to be one of these things that they just crumple or they stop.
Absolutely.
And especially in business. Like if you stop when failure happens, you're never going to succeed because success is always on top of a pile of failures. So thank you for taking the time to come on and share a failure, a misstep that you had, because I know it's going to be valuable to somebody else as they are looking to grow their business. So before we jump in, help us set the scene a little bit. Talk a little bit about Joy Creative Shop. What do you sell? How did it come to be, and like what was going on that led to the decision that we're going to talk about today?
Okay, awesome. So Joy Creative Shop started as a lot of things do, especially for a female. I was a new mom and wanted a creative outlet and always had that entrepreneurial bug, and thought I'd be happy just staying at home. So I set up an Etsy shop with stationery, and that's really paper goods are the basis of what we do. We've evolved into gift wrap and gifting solutions, but we do paper and we do it really well. But I started it as a creative outlet, quickly realized that it was necessary for me if it was a mental or just having something that was my own outside of motherhood, and let it kind of ride. I really didn't stress. I didn't spend a ton of effort growing it. There was no marketing. It was just Etsy has its built-in. So we're like, oh, every year did a little better than the one before. And when it got to a time where I could put my head down and get to work, that's where I was like, let's see what we can do. Is this like an actual company, or is this something that's a really fun lifestyle little hobby? So we've definitely evolved. We are in the scale mode of growing. It's super exciting. And we went from Etsy to Shopify. And we've had consistent growth every year, more growth than probably most, but it was small back in the day. So we've been really consistent, and have acquired customers that keep coming back. And for that, obviously, we're super grateful. But it's just proven to us that we have a product market fit with a product, that resonates with people. And at the end of the day, we really want to help busy moms, busy parents, women kind of look like they have their stuff together without all the effort that it might actually take to do that.
So I want to dig in on something that you said. So you said as you were starting out, you had an Etsy shop, and you said we had no marketing. I hear this a lot, and I think it's because we often attribute marketing to sort of like direct outreach, right? I'm sending emails, or I'm building lists, or I'm doing social media, I'm doing X, Y, Z. But there are other aspects of marketing and marketing decisions that you were making at that time, and most of those probably were around the brand, right? You came up with Joy Creative Shop, right? And there were colors and logos and experience and an ethos. Talk to me a little bit about how you came up with that brand early on.
Sure. So again, a lot of it was very natural and organic, and it kind of it was a let it roll approach because I didn't know better, to be honest. But what I did know was that I was treating every customer that came to us like they were the most valuable person to us. So yes, we are bright and colorful. We're a team of graphic designers. So aesthetic, which is usually what's seen as brand, is dialed in. It's what we're really good at. But when we've gotten to grow and really spend time on like what our values are and how do we want those values to come through to the customer as well as within our products, we've established that we're really a customer service brand, if that makes sense. So yes, we sell paper and pretty things, and we teach you how to gift wrap them on Instagram, but like how we treat you is really what our core is about. And that should go from us to then who's gifting that gift and the feelings that they get when they give it to someone they care about. So that's really what we lean on for brand. It's the experience and how we make them feel, hopefully, and then how they go and, pay it forward and make the person they're gifting to feel.
There's too many times that people do not consider the customer experience as part of the overall brand. Right? They're like, oh, well, the brand is the logo, the name, the colors, the messaging. That's what the brand is. And that's just simply not true. The brand is how you are treated, right? It's how you experience the product that you have. It's also what that product says about you. And you kind of brought that up as well, right? Somebody is using yours to give a gift to somebody, right? And what it says about the person giving the gift, that they cared, that they took that extra time to go over and above to give this more bespoke gift, this nicer gift, right?
For sure.
Those are all key elements of brand that all fall into a marketing mindset. So I love that it's funny. A lot of times I see CEOs make marketing decisions just in an intelligent way because they're not even thinking about it as marketing. Right? They're thinking about this is the right way to treat a customer, and that customer is going to love our stuff and tell other people about it, and they're going to come back and buy it again, right?
Yeah.
I saw a recent study that said that 1 in 3 customers would be willing to leave a brand they love after just one bad experience. And so when you think about that, you're like, oh my gosh, like it doesn't matter how good your brand is, how good your marketing is, how good all that stuff is. If your customer experience is terrible, you have the potential to lose 1/3 of your customers. Like that's crazy. And we too many times just don't think about that experience. So good on you for early on realizing that is a key part of the Joy Creative Shop ethos.
For sure. And that's really, it was how I was interacting because it was just me at the start with customers one-on-one, like they were my friend, and knowing that the referral would go either way, a good or bad one. And then when I brought team members on, that was one of the first things we kind of, we don't even have like a playbook of all the things we do, but there is a customer service guide, and it is a tone. It's how we speak. It's how we handle a situation, and it's really simple. And I know it's a lot harder as you get bigger and there's systems in place and all the logistics, but at the end of the day, like you make it right. You just do whatever it takes to make it right. And so that even though they might have hit a roadblock or had a glitch in our experience, say the gift wrap for Christmas arrived a little late, we found a way to let them feel like after that bad experience, they were happy. You know what I mean? And they want to come back, not because we gave them a gift card, not because we said we give them free product, but we are humble in our approach of like, yes, we messed up. This one got overlooked, or so sorry about USPS. But it's something that people try to overcomplicate. And if you make someone, it's like when you run into someone that's a total pessimist and you contradict everything they say with a positive comment. And then they're like, oh yeah, you're right. And I feel that way. We do that with customers. They come in hot because they're disappointed and we disappointed them. And that is actually, as a people pleaser, that's really hard for me to understand. But we have found that at the end of the day, it's really just about making it right. We will lose some. We know we can't please everybody. But when I tell you we have so little returns, we have no negative feedback. And if all we ask is they give us a chance to make it right, rather than a comment on Instagram about how the gift wrap was not what they hoped. I'm like, just email us. Let's talk through it. So that open line of communication with our customers has been really, I believe, why we have been successful. And a note on the marketing and the brand piece. We don't usually look at competitors of ours. We kind of keep our head down and do our thing. But this year, going into 2025 planning, I was looking at really that even focusing more on the customer as the center of our everything. And I Googled a bunch of competing brands in the paper industry of what pulls up on a Google search when you type their name in. And it's usually a very logical, like we do X with X, and it's got a luxe feel or whatever it is. And I went through 4 or 5 and none of them talk about the products they create and how they help the person they serve. And I'm like, if we can figure that out more than we have and dial that in to where who cares if you make a pretty notepad, but if our notepad helps you declutter your mind or give a really special personalized gift and tell that person before they've even met us online, I think we have a really good chance to stand out.
Yeah. And the words you're talking about is value proposition, right? What value do your products bring? It's a notepad.
Yeah,
right? There are notepads everywhere. There are thousands of options, right?
Yeah.
But if you hope to stand out in the marketplace, your notepad has to have something attached to it that somebody is going to connect with differently than anywhere else, right? And so I love that you're focusing on that because that is going to be something that brand plus an awesome product, that's unstoppable and it makes you stand out. And that's a lot easier when you are in direct to consumer, right? So you started on Etsy, you moved into Shopify, you're owning it, right? It's all direct to consumer. You can touch every part of that experience. But at some point, you made the decision, we should start expanding and looking into wholesale. So talk to me a little bit about where that decision came from. What was happening in your business? What were you seeing that you're like, I think we need to expand outside of where we're winning today?
For sure. So when we started on Etsy, we were mainly personalized. Actually, we were only personalized. So there was no opportunity for wholesale. You can't sell, we're not big enough to have like a wedding album where people can choose from. We weren't going to go that route. So until our brand and product evolved enough to where we had standalone items that were picked off the shelf and not personalized, there wasn't even a thought as to why would we go into wholesale. But as we grew and realized some of our hero products are the ones that don't have someone's name on it, that was, it was like, well, if we're getting thousands of purchases, or customers every year for this product, why wouldn't we want it on the shelves of our local stores? And again, we came at it with the angle of, it will help our customer. It will serve our customer. We have a huge customer base all over our country. And then they can go support their local shops if our products are there and get them the day of, or, within a couple of days, not have to pay for shipping, all those things for some of our hero products. And I am also never really satisfied. And so I'm like constantly wanting what's the next thing. And in the paper world, based on how I started years ago, there was no e-com, there was no direct to consumer. You went to trade shows, you were wholesale heavy or only. And so I was like, well, this is backwards. Like we have this wonderful, thriving, successful D2C brand. Why would we not expand into wholesale? And there's a company called Rifle Paper Company that if anyone is a paper lover. They know who they are. And I've watched them grow. They started about the same time I did, kind of out of college on a different project or business, but they've evolved into a worldwide brand. They're in every gift and paper shop. So in my mind, I'm like, that was their model, and that kind of makes sense for us. So I think we should do it. We should kind of hunker down, figure out what products we think are best for us, and then kind of just rip the Band-Aid off and go. And so we did. It was actually a very quick, not thought out decision, but it was a good one. It just didn't maybe go the direction that we were hoping. And so we pulled back pretty quick.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So I see this happen a lot, where you can often convince yourself to do something, even though you kind of know all of the things that can potentially go wrong with it, right? You think it's the confirmation bias, right? Like, I have this idea and I've seen somebody else do it, so it must work. We see that in marketing all the time. A CEO goes, "Hey, my competitor just sent this email. Why aren't we sending this email?" Right? The amount of times that I've gotten that over the course of my career.
Yeah.
And then what does that do? That sends the marketing team into, okay, well, we've got to do this email, right?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes it's this, if I see it happening, it must be working. And that's not necessarily true. Now, obviously it's working for Rifle Paper Company,
Sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
that is right. But was it right for Joy Creative Shop? Maybe not. So let's talk a little bit about how you went about that. So making the decision to go into wholesale, that's the first step.
Sure.
But how did you approach doing that? And what were some of the early signs that you saw that you're like, this is not working for us?
Yeah. And I think the key word is not working for us. And at that time, we didn't bomb wholesale. You know what I mean? Like, we're in several hundred stores in the country. We have a presence. We have what we want. The way we went about it the first time was not the way I would continue. And that's where the failure piece, but also like pick yourself up quickly and pivot, comes into play. So it goes back to COVID was a big turning point for all of those wholesale heavy brands. They were scrambling for a direct to consumer website. They were putting in efforts to get to their customer when they'd only been talking to shop owners and big retail partners. And so we were so secure in that we have that. And what we thought was, well, how do we expand to, let's treat our store owners the way we treat our customers. Let's give them resources and photos and content around our products. And we did, I will say, the first step we took before going the traditional route with like market and showrooms was we set up a fair wholesale account. And we were new to it before it was widespread and all the big brands were on it. And we saw sales. So we were like, okay, they want this product. And we also felt secure in that we weren't coming out with a product line for wholesale. These were already products that our customer had told us over and over again that these are best-selling products. So at least I felt secure in that we weren't going to fingers crossed, take a product to market in a different way. We knew these products had a history of success. We just thought we'd expand their horizon. And, it's that shiny object syndrome that you're like, God, what we do is so good. And we're growing 100% every year, like all these wonderful things, yet it wasn't enough at the time. And I felt like it was a missing piece for us. So we called a showroom local to Dallas. They had a Dallas and Atlanta showroom. They took a meeting with us. And again, there's that little bit of pride and ego that you're like, ooh, they want us. They like our stuff. And I'm smart enough to know that they're business owners. And if they think it will sell, they like you. It's not a personal thing. I do think they loved our products. The first red flag I got, and this was before we even signed the agreement. We did this in November. Market was in January. So we were not fully prepared, but it was local. So we're like, we can wing it. We can do it. I was very secure in our offerings, and it was condensed down to our best selling. And the showroom talked me out of it by saying, hey, the best way to know of what's going to work is to broaden what you offer. That day, I can picture where I was. I'm like, that was my first mistake. I should have stood firm. But again, in my mind, these people know more than me. So why wouldn't we trust them and do that? So we invested in a huge amount of inventory on a double amount probably of SKUs than we wanted to start with. And those were the products. There was 50% that were super specific to us that are, Joy Creative Shop, best sellers off the shelf. And then there's another half that sell pretty well, but they're really not that different than what everyone else is doing. And it was box notes and notepads, and it's very blurry because, again, how easily can you make something look kind of similar to what someone already has? So we went with a big SKU list, showed up at market. We went to the Atlanta market, and we were like, okay, this is good. We got a meeting with Container Store, all the things that you want to happen quickly, and got into some shops, but we never really were overjoyed. We were always kind of like, this is good, but gosh, not what we put on paper for our forecast. And we quickly realized when we're putting our sales in the hands of someone that isn't us, and I know there's a control piece to that. That's probably not ideal thinking for a big term, longer term growth, but we're a tiny little, fish in a huge pond. And who do you think they're going to sell? You think they're going to sell rifle paper that pays their mortgage? Or are they going to take Joy Creative Shop out of the bag and be super excited about? So there was that little bit of okay, how are we going to, I feel like we might as well just do it ourselves. If we're going to have to keep fighting for you, there's sample decks, there's time away. I have 3 kids. So travel time, things that just were after about a year, and then some unpaid invoices kind of sealed the deal for us. We were like, they just sold to a store that closed a week after, and we shipped it. So they got it quickly. And then the owner was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And we were like, oh, shoot. Okay. And I went from we're all in to the next day I was like, nope, we're pulling out of market for that next year. And it wasn't we failed, this was the worst. It's a bummer because we lost money. We lost a lot of time. And then we had this inventory sitting that's, we thought we'd move through in a year or 6 months. And it didn't go that way. But what we did decide that day was we do believe wholesale is a part of our overall, one of the the channels that we will sell through, but we have to figure out what strategy works for us and how can we do it differently than what everyone else does, and something that supports the way we want to be able to treat our customers. And maybe that just means a smaller wholesale division. Maybe one day that means no wholesale division. I don't really know, but it instantly was you get that kind of gut feeling, and it might have been a reactive move to jump in, but we reactively withdrew that fast, because what's the point of just letting it go longer and just still getting that feeling? We never got that reassuring feeling this is the right choice for us. So it was lots of lessons learned, and it was taking focus away from a thriving D2C brand. And it was let's go back a little bit. Let's just pause. We still have fair. We still get orders every month, every week, really. And then let's go take care of those customers we do have. Let's highlight them on social. Let's help their, let's do it the way we know. And then when there's a proper time, or we can put a person behind it to go about it in a more authentic way, we will.
Yeah, and there's so many things that you talked about, just the red flags that you start seeing when you're like, hey, I'm this tiny fish. And I've been to market. If you've never been to market, market is nuts.
Insane.
Just these giant buildings with just floor after floor of what kind of seem like the same shop over and over and over. And you're trying to stand out. And market is hard to stand out. And so whenever you think of, man, I'm relying on a rep to market my products, right? When you were in your D2C space, you got to choose what you did, how you talked about your product, what products you offered, right? And in that entire experience, once you introduce reps, all of a sudden your message got moved a layer outside of you. And that is really, really difficult. One of the reasons we talked about that you pulled back was just the overall customer experience, and you lost the ability to control that, and then that impacts brand, which could impact future growth, right? And so talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Yeah. So we noticed that when we were at market ourselves, we were there. That's when, and even the showroom advised, you have to be there. Otherwise, there's too many reps, there's too many customers. No one can really take care of everyone that walks by. But one of the key examples was some of Oprah's staff walked by when I was in Atlanta, and I got to talk to them. I got to hand them a sample. I got to tell them the heart and soul of the bag of tags. And 2 months later, we get a call that a different product was being featured on her favorite things. I can promise you that was not going to happen if I wasn't standing there that day. So that's a little piece of the control piece, but also it's that opportunity. And we knew we just couldn't be everywhere all at one time. I wasn't willing to travel. And then once the order was taken by a rep, we lost total control outside of an email that the customer may or may not get of like, how's it going? Are the products even out? If so, what's selling best? I mean, these store owners are overloaded with so many brands and SKUs. And so we just kept getting that gut feeling of like, it's so impersonal. And, I think we in time can craft a more authentic approach, a little bit of the surprise and delight, which is what we like to do with our customers of like, hey, they got like a little something in the mail. Well, that might remind them about us and, remember, nudge them to order again. And so we just kept getting that feeling in the showroom that we're going to have to keep fighting really hard to even, one, get their attention, two, ever get them to repurchase. It is so hard when you're fighting about competing brands. And we weren't able to really tell them the heart and soul of like the why we create these products, who we create them for. And so it's like, if we can't really sell them and teach them and educate them, we're no different than any other, brand that sells paper goods.
Yeah. And that's one of the key aspects of marketing. Marketing helps tell the story. It helps educate. So you being there was the physical embodiment of marketing, right? Yeah. And to do that at scale at Atlanta market is so expensive.
For sure.
I mean, yes, you can get in a showroom. That's great. Yes, you've already paid for inventory. Yes, you're paying sales rep commissions and all of that. That's not even skimming the surface of how much you can spend at a place like that. Like marketing is everywhere. There's events everywhere. There's floor to ceiling, and all that stuff is so very expensive. And it's like if you're gonna go to market, there's a part of a willingness. I'm gonna have to spend a significant amount of either time, money, etc., just to be able to be visible in this giant landscape. And so there's when you think about your strategy and how you're doing that, that's something that obviously you always need to consider, because it's not just being there. And that principle is true of anything which related to marketing. Like you can create an Instagram account, and just because you're there does not mean all of a sudden it just works, right? Or even if you're there and posting, right? It's not all of a sudden like, oh yes, this is the best. You have to say, I need to figure out a way to stand out in this sea, which again is marketing and telling that story. And it's so important as you lean into marketing. And I feel like you've understood this from the beginning, whether you've had the words to articulate it or not, but like, the value proposition that you bring to this category is absolutely essential for the long-term success. And you sense that I can't get that out there. In the way that we're doing this approach to wholesale, I can't truly show the value proposition. And the partners that I chose don't know it, aren't going to bring it up, right? They're just like, that's not how they're selling. They're like, oh, you want notebooks? I've got this one and this one. Which one do you like? They're not going to say, let me tell you about this notebook and what it's going to say about the person who buys this. They're going to be like, how much shelf space? How much is the cost? And so I think it's really, really wise of you that you said, you know what? My brand is more important than us just trying to get out there, right? And spending all this money. We need to figure out what is the right way to bring our brand to market. And we've already figured out the right way to do that on D2C. Now we got to figure out what is the right way to do that on wholesale so that we can have that authentic experience and continue to grow. So if you were sitting across the table from another CEO
Yeah.
who is in a similar space. They're wanting to get out there. They're considering wholesale.
Yeah.
They're considering this. What sort of advice would you give them of how to think through this decision?
Yeah, something I kind of learned during that process was also, had we exhausted every dollar, person on our team, and time to max out the channel that we were growing, which was direct to consumer. And I can honestly say we had not, because this past year when we weren't super engaged in wholesale was our best year yet. It was again another 100% growth year, which we hadn't had that the last year. So we had not maxed out the channel that has been our focus for the most time. So I feel like it's so easy to be like, well, we've got one going at 25%. Let's go to the next thing. And so you lose momentum. And we put all our eggs back in the same basket this year. Fair is still up and running. We take care of our customers the best we can on that, but it's not our priority, and time isn't, and dollars really aren't even being spent to grow that channel, but it's there. The seed has been planted. So when we do want to ramp it up, I think we're in a great spot to do it. But I think making sure that you've maxed out every opportunity within the channel, or say it's like you've got one business and you want to start a second. I jump all over the place in my brain. I'm like, oh, that sounds fun. We should do that. And I'm like, no, we have so much more to do. So I think that would be my advice. And it's not fun or sexy, but it's definitely like, if you're like, hey, I could probably step away from D2C completely, me as the CEO, and it would run flawlessly, then I can go focus on the next project. Or when I'm building out my 1, 3, 5 year forecasting, like, hey, let's put wholesale back on for 2025. And let's give it a pause year. There's no shame in that. Taking a step backwards is never a bad thing, although it feels icky when you're doing it. Feels like failure, and that feels icky usually. So I feel like just if it didn't work then, or it's not the right time now, just put it somewhere on the forecast. You're not giving up on it. You're just actually being really smart on the timing side of things. And if something opens up, you can do it sooner, or capital's available, or people are available, and you want to allocate them to that, then it's a perfect time for it. But and I'm fully to blame, but like we jumped the gun on wholesale. And part of me is glad we did, because I was thinking that was our missing piece. So now I see how far we've come in that short year where it hasn't been our focus. And so it probably won't be. It will be more of a focus come mid-year 2025 for us, because a few things have to fall into place. And then there's the Amazon conversation, there's TikTok shops, all the things that sound exciting and opportunity, but I'm like, we don't have all the pieces yet to go do them in the way we'd want.
Yeah. You brought up focus, right? You said I diverted resources to go to this new endeavor, and we didn't grow at the rate that we have in the past. I took those resources and put them back, and we grew 100%.
Yeah.
I think there is the shiny object syndrome, right? But one of the lessons it sounds like you learned is like, if I can't do this to the level that is right for our business, I'm not going to do it, right? Yes, there's a ton of things that we can do. And if we can figure out how do we do that and still not kill the thing that made us who we are, right? Our D2C, right? We don't want to ignore that. We're not going to do it. That's an awesome tenet of everything, because marketing so often is like 75 spinning plates. Mm-hmm. I want to be on every social network, right? I want to do email, and I want to have 1,000 workflows, and I want to have X, Y, and Z, right? And it's constantly like, let's do 70 different things at once. Why is none of it working? And because you're not focusing. And so this, you went in there, it didn't work out like you wanted. And you realized, you came back and said, if we can't do this for the Joy Creative Shop brand the way that we want our customers to experience, we're just not going to do it. That lesson is worth its weight in gold.
Invaluable.
And if you can, one, hear the lesson, and two, recall the lesson when the shiny object comes into play.
Yeah.
Those are the two key pieces. I think everybody gets that lesson. It's just sure. when that object is so shiny, it like your eyes close a little bit and you can't see that thing that you put up there to remind you, hey, don't fall for it this time. So I love this story. I think Here's the reason I love it, and I'll just reiterate it, is that brand is, if you're in the world of marketing, there's always this sort of argument around what is brand? Is brand important? No, it's this, it's this. Brand is the single most valuable asset your company has, hands down. And like, I mean, Steve Jobs said it, Warren, but like all of these greats acknowledge that is the single most important thing. And when we make decisions that don't traditionally feel like they're in marketing, they're in customer success, right? Well, man, those returns are too high. We don't want to do that. That's impacting brand,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going to give, it's not as quality paper, or, oh, we're not going to ship, we're going to delay shipping, or we're going to do this. And we're like, all of that stuff, you are damaging your brand and making it even more difficult to get customers in the future. But if you focus on that customer experience, you are doing marketing.
Yeah.
You are putting awesome experiences that people will post about. I mean, the amount of times that I've seen a post where someone's like, here's this horrible experience I had, and here's how they made it right. I am forever a customer of this company. One, they're a forever customer. And two, all the people that saw that was amazing, right? And so focusing on that customer experience as it builds your brand is one of the best ways to give that value and stand out in the marketplace. So thank you so much for helping illustrate that point. And I wish you and Joy Creative Shop all the best moving forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on. It was super fun.
Thanks again for listening to the My Biggest Marketing Mistake podcast. We hope you got a lot of valuable insights that you can apply to your business today. And we're not done. We've got a lot more great stories of failure coming your way. So be sure to follow us on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, or check us out on YouTube. And be sure to leave us a rating and review because it helps a lot. Now, here's what's coming up on our next episode.
And we didn't recognize it. And so a very, very costly mistake actually just this past year. And so we're still trying to rebound from that.